Welcome into the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We are, of course, a Blue Wire podcast brought to you by Underdog Fantasy Sports. Tonight, we are joined by, of course, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I think I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I think the weather's warming up. There's no crazy cold and rain in sight necessarily. Kings have won 5 of 7, but yet people are still kind of freaking out a little bit. But I don't know. I feel like oftentimes when I'm talking to people, I end up coming off as the optimist guy and positivity, and that's usually
erroneous.
Yeah,
erroneous.
I mean that's something must be going wrong. No, I guess I'm doing good. I'm fine. How are you?
And of course, we are joined by Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I'm doing well. I am in year 7 of my Ball State college football dynasty, and my quarterback, Jamison Ham, has been letting me down recently. But
oh no,
right. We are in the yeah, it's okay. I only have lost 1 game. I transferred to the Big 12. I have to play Kansas State after this for Big 12 championship. So
okay, state action. So my question: have you found a way to change his name? Take off one of the M's, because I think that's probably the problem. You have 2 M's on the end, and change his name just to James.
Yeah, I found a quarterback prospect, for people curious, named Jamison Ham, and he turned out to be good. I didn't pick him just for the name.
He picked him for the name.
Where did you pick him?
Playing college football. My video game.
Like on a video game. Oh, the video game.
The video game, Sean. The video game.
No, I didn't know it was a fantasy thing.
What's going on, everybody? We are, of course, doing a live show. Do you guys have your podcast candles?
Of course.
I do, actually. Got a cactus blossom.
I don't believe it. Whoa, what is that, Sean? That looked like
warm and welcome.
Warm and welcome?
Just like me.
That is not what I would consider Sean Cunningham as warm and welcome.
Why not?
I don't think so. I don't know. You're not I don't know. You don't seem like you're a hugger.
Oh, I'm a hugger.
Are you a hugger?
I've not to just some hug stranger
from Sean Cunningham.
No, that'd be crossing a line.
You've never got a hug from?
Aren't you a minor? I can't hug a minor.
That's crazy.
Warm, like right here in the Chatty House. It's not the Chatty House, but Chatty House after party. Warm and welcome is my girlfriend's name. Good for you. Good for you. It's also a podcast candle name. Okay, let's get to the basics. Number one, if you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate you guys jumping on board here in the evening. We're like a pop-up, right? We just show up out of nowhere and decide to do a podcast live. And we don't advertise it until maybe 5 minutes before. But if you're a subscriber to the podcast, you get an advanced warning, because when I create the podcast stream, it pops up and populates and sends out an alert. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Give us a rating and review wherever you watch the podcast. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber. Do all of that good stuff. Welcome in. What do you guys? How are you guys doing this evening? This is kind of an impromptu pod, but what's going on, everybody?
Not too
you
much.
Talking to me? Are you talking to the?
I'm talking
chat?
to you guys.
I thought you were crowdsourcing. Go ahead, Brenden. What are you up to?
I'm fine. Been pretty busy for the most part, I feel like, and today was one of the more relaxing days, I would say. I don't know about relaxing, but not as much going on. Can't complain. I feel like we're in the somewhat final stretch here. Maybe not quite to the point where we would say that. But yeah, it's been a busy handful of weeks, and yeah, doing all right. I'm ready for the Kings to play some, no disrespect to the Hornets and Jazz, but some real competition, and see how this team stacks up a little bit.
Careful what you wish for.
Ouch.
I went out to the high school basketball section championships earlier today. I thought I might see you there, because you had mentioned you might be there.
Not me.
Thinking about it. I'll be there tomorrow.
Oh, you're going to go tomorrow. I might be there for some of the early games. I'm not sure. I don't think I'll be there for the late ones, even though I'll check out the late ones when they get to NorCal and maybe even State. But no, it was it's been a good it's been fine. I forget what the hell I was gonna say in the middle of all that. I was gonna ask Brenden a question and I can't. Oh, I saw Steph go off for 56 tonight. That was
Same.
remarkable. I mean, my goodness. Geez, that was crazy. They've won 5 straight. So yeah, the standings are shaping up nicely. Hoping to get some thumbs up. Oh, people have already gotten on the thumbs up already. How about that? 17 already. That's fantastic.
Nice.
And what's this question here? What is this? Mr. Angel 91 says Sean hates me. I always talk shit to him on X, though. I respect the F out of him.
Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
I don't talk much.
Do you respond? I don't think you respond to a lot.
I don't respond a lot. It takes first of all, I don't look at the mentions a lot, if I'm being honest. I should, because I actually am amused by like YouTube comments, and I just don't tend to look at the X comments very often. But no, I mean, if it's timing, so I think if one stands out, I might respond.
Yeah. Let's Jim Garfinkel here in the chat. R.I.P. Gene Hackman. Someone tell Brenden who he is. I don't think Brenden.
Yeah.
That's going to take way too long.
Can I do a top? Let me just top of my head. I hadn't even thought about this, but Brenden,
okay.
If I could give you 5 Gene Hackman movies to watch, and I know I'm going to miss some really good ones.
Write these down.
Okay. Do you have ready?
I think I know what number 1 is, but go ahead.
French Connection. No, take that back.
French Connection.
The package.
God,
It is the package. The package is first. Because I already know if it's like a pre-1990s movie, he might only stomach one of those. Like he's not going to
something in color, preferably.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen the package. I don't know that I know that one.
All right. How about Crimson Tide?
Oh, Crimson Tide's great. Yes.
Is this a Bama movie?
What?
Is it a Bama movie?
No, it's a submarine movie with Denzel Washington.
Submarine movie. Yeah.
I mean, Hoosiers is terrible. Like, can I just say, like, it's such a corny movie. I'm talking to Brenden here. Brenden will not like Hoosiers, especially since it's a basketball movie. So, with respect to everybody who likes Gene Hackman from Hoosiers, I get it, but we're talking to Brenden here. Brendan's not going to like that movie. So
okay, so no, Brenden will like it because it's a basketball movie, and Dennis Hopper's incredible.
He's gonna hate it.
Okay,
it's
and
corny.
Did you know
it's corny?
Okay, so the story of Hoosiers is based off a true story, right? Did you know, I read this one time, that Don Mattingly was the ball boy on the original Hoosiers team?
Didn't know that.
Random fact. All right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's wrong. Okay, go ahead, Sean.
You interrupted my list here. How many did I give you already? I gave you the
3.
package and the French Connection. So we're going to do 1.
The package and Crimson Tide. I scratched out French Connection.
Keep French Connection off.
You want an Oscar.
I can't even give him Poseidon Adventure, which is like, that's a fun movie, but you won't. I know he's not gonna like it. It didn't age well because of like he's used to CGI and special effects, and it's just not gonna work for him. So, Unforgiven. Someone already said it. Let's throw Unforgiven in there. Fantastic movie.
The Quick and the Dead is really good too, Rustdog. You're right. No, The Quick and the Dead is good.
It's not bad. I think I have to give him the Wes Anderson movie. Do we not?
Yes, of course.
Absolutely. All right.
This is one that
Royal Tenenbaums.
It's a movie?
No. Royal Tenenbaums is the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, the Royal Tenenbaums, and I think he would get into that. Like, I think Brenden can get the humor.
It's quirky, so I think you'll like it. But this one's going to be even funnier. The Birdcage, and Russ Dog 316 mentioned it. That's a good one. And I think I just leave one over. Maybe we'll just let the chat pick it up in terms of what the last one should be. But I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take it back. Another Clint Eastwood movie that he's in. Go The Firm. I was going to give you Absolute
Firm
Power.
is incredible.
Go The Firm. Do The Firm with Tom Cruise.
Yep. And Mr. Angel, you ask in the chat, why can't we super chat? To be honest with you, I don't know how to super chat, and we'll turn on super chat. Super chat is where I believe super chat is where they can just throw money at us, and we should probably do that.
Say less.
Yeah, say less.
Turn that shit on. Want my Cash App?
Yeah, there we go.
That's
Sean's holding up his Venmo.
No, I don't have Venmo. It got hacked. I'll do Cash App all day though.
Oh, awesome. So the Gene Hackman thing, like Brenden, I don't know if you read this, but Gene Hackman passed away today at the age of 95. He's an all-time great actor. He's like absolutely spectacular. One of my favorite movies from him is Uncommon Valor from like the
good one.
80s. Absolutely spectacular movie. Just a great actor and like mysterious stuff going on, but really sad story. I think, I don't think there's anything nefarious that happened here, outside of a very, an elderly man probably passed away, and then bad things happened after that. So his wife, his dog, and him all passed away, and they were found by some workers that working on their house. That's what this sounds like the story is. Although the story has changed at least
A
like
lot.
8 times. It's changed a
lot.
lot over the last like I don't know, 12, 48, 14 hours. Anyway, yeah, shout out to the great Gene Hackman. And I'm sure we're missing like a whole bunch.
Oh,
Like the
Mississippi
replacements, he's
Burning.
fun. Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
Like, there's
How
so
many
many good
freaking
ones.
movies is this guy in?
Just a lot. And I'm telling you, like,
well, he was
I gave
95,
you
Brenden.
ones that I think you will like.
Yeah.
Like I know how I'm kind of hip to how you are now when it comes to movies.
Are you?
And I think so.
I don't. Do you like Wes Anderson movies or no? Do you know what Wes
He doesn't
Anderson
even
Are you
know
movies?
who the
asking
fuck
me?
Wes
I have
Yes,
no
he
clue.
is. Yes.
I have
He
no
doesn't know
clue.
who Wes Anderson is.
Okay,
man.
so like the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, right?
Right, that's probably that one and Rushmore are probably my favorite ones.
The Grand Budapest was incredible. You
Not
didn't
bad.
like it?
Yeah,
I
it's
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I think the Royal Tannenbaums, to me, it stands out as like just spectacular, and the cast is unbelievable. It's Ben Stiller. It's both the Wilson brothers, Owen and Luke Wilson. It's got why am I drawing a blank? Oh my goodness, who's the actress in it? Sean, help me out here.
In which one? Royal Tenenbaums?
Royal Tannenbaums. Yeah.
Is it Kate Blanchett? Isn't Kate Blanchett in it?
Oh yeah, but and Olivia. I mean, Houston.
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow is who I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of, but Houston that passed away is the wife.
Angelica Houston.
Angelica Houston.
Yeah, Morticia Adams from the Adams Family.
Yeah,
The
well,
movies,
he
anyway.
doesn't know what the Adams Family is. Come on now. He might know who Tuesday
He knows
is.
who
No,
Wednesday is.
Wednesday.
You called her Tuesday. What the
Wednesday. My bad.
big level of disrespect?
Yeah. All right, let's get into the actual podcast. See, Sean's
This might
like,
be
hey.
a record.
Sean's
By the way,
like,
Get Shorty is phenomenal. Jim.
Oh yes,
Fantastic. Get Shorty.
Should we quickly address the Sacramento movie or whatever the heck is going on here?
Yeah, Sean. Why
Well,
don't
there's
you?
two
There's
coming
two,
up,
right?
But yeah, I mean, the movie Sacramento is with Michael Cera and Kristen Stewart, and that movie has a release date. The trailer just dropped.
Oh wait,
Filmed
I have
all
to
over
correct
town.
myself before you get too far. Angelica Houston has not passed away. That's my bad.
She's still with us. I
Go
didn't
ahead.
hear you say that. Yeah. Yeah, but Sacramento is, I mean, it's all over East Sac, Old Sac, down by Joe's Crab Shack, filmed in those locations, our street corridor, even up in Pollock Pines a little bit. So that movie, if you haven't seen the trailer, go out and take a look at it. Looks pretty funny. I know it's one of the stars, and the director is also one of the stars of the film, is what I was trying to say. And then the other one that's coming out is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Paul Thomas Anderson, for Brendan, who is a dullard, did Boogie Nights. I was a big fan of this movie that came out with what's it called?
Brendan's currently looking up Dillard.
Dullard.
I mean,
Dillard
it was
is a
definitely
stellar.
offensive. That's all I know.
Yeah, it was. Shots were fired there.
Yeah.
But Licorice Pizza was his most recent one. I know some people didn't love aspects.
It
of
was
the
a
movie,
little
but
weird, Sean.
I
was.
loved it. Thought it was fantastic.
I know
and
you
he
loved it,
also directs like every music video by Haim. So if you're familiar with that band, which you're probably not, hi Spencer, then go check them
We
out. But
successfully
actually,
listed like 20 movies, and the only one I had even heard of was Hoosiers.
wow, yeah, don't watch that one. Don't watch that one. And the Paul Thomas Anderson movie that was just filmed in Sac is supposed to come out in August, I think. August, maybe September. But it's a huge, big budget movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, Alana Haim from that band I was talking about. Sean Penn is in it. Tiana Taylor. Just a huge cast. So, Benicio del Toro is in it.
Oh, Benicio del Toro. I love it.
And it's like all over Northern California. But there was a big scene that was filmed right there on J Street that had explosions and shit. So go check that
Yeah. Okay, let's actually talk basketball. Again, thanks for tuning into the Kings Beat podcast. We do actually talk basketball. And thank you for the comments that are always nice to see. Like Mac, we're the most reliable beat writers for Sacramento Kings. We appreciate the love, and we'll figure out how to. I don't even turn on commercials for the Kings Beat podcast on YouTube, just because they're usually intrusive, but I probably will at some point. So, we've got basketball to talk about. The Sacramento Kings have rattled off 2 wins. They've moved to 30-28 on the season, 2 games over 500. They've got some separation from the 11th seeded Phoenix Suns, who are playing as we speak. And I don't know what the score is, but the Phoenix Suns are 3 games back of the Kings coming into today. Phoenix is down to the Pelicans 111-108 with 3:55 left in the fourth. That would be huge for the Sacramento Kings. The Dallas Mavericks are a couple of games. Well, they're a half game above the Kings, or they were coming into tonight. Now they're a game ahead of the Kings after they beat the Charlotte Hornets 103-96. Dallas, just got to be honest, if you only beat the Hornets by 7 points, you're probably not a very good basketball team. Because Charlotte is horrible. We learned that this last week. The Kings just sawed through 2 really bad teams. And I know it's hard to gain a lot of like intel from watching these games, but whether it's like the 43 point drubbing of the Hornets, or like a 17-point win against the Utah Jazz, is there anything that stands out between these 2 games for you guys? We'll start with Brenden.
I mean, I think that you just see some stylistic differences as you're trying to work in Zach LaVine, but I think that Zach has to kind of be the main takeaway, seeing him start to get comfortable and just being himself out there. I think that was a theme we were hearing over the first 5 games or so, is like, hey, we need you to be you, stop trying to fit in, which is a common thing that happens with guys around the league for sure. And, I think he's definitely had somewhat of a coming out party, really, even since like the Portland or the New Orleans game that I'm trying to remember. I think they ended up losing that game. They did. CJ McCollum went ridiculous, but Zach had a great game there. Obviously, the ridiculously efficient 40 ball that he had against the Hornets. And so I think you're starting to see him get a little bit more comfortable, but that also means a little less dribble handoffs, because as Domas said the other day, he's a guy that wants the ball in his hands and a few more dribbles. And so you're seeing that adjustment. And the other thing I would really point to is Malik Monk as the point guard, I think has been a interesting experience. I think that he's still fairly young, and I think it's something that he can continue to get better at. But nights where you see, I want to say, I'm forgetting exactly what game it is, but like a 10 assist and 5 turnover game, where there's some bright moments, but also doing a little bit too much at times. And I thought last night that Doug Christie tried to put him next to other point guards, which really only means Markelle Fultz. And I guess you'd consider Keon Ellis as part of that somewhat. So seeing them mess with the rotations a little bit, but to me, I would say the big 3 that I'm kind of keeping tabs on, and I think that we've seen some notable differences from, are Zach LaVine, Malik Monk, and Domantas Sabonis. And then, Keegan Murray is just the one game, but I thought that game that he had last night against Utah was probably the best of his season. And Doug Christie came on our show today and was talking about that's what he wants to see more from Keegan Murray. 10 3-point attempts, good rebounding, great hustle. And so, some interesting things as these guys continue to try to get more acclimated with one another.
Sean, what do you got for us?
I mean, get right games, slump busters, finding ways to just kind of get things going a little bit and build some momentum and some, just some positive vibes around the team are necessary. You can't help who your opponents are. So while I don't think it's fair to kind of say, oh, you did what you're supposed to do, because if you lost, I think everyone would be losing their fucking minds. I mean, everyone would be like, oh, this team.
Very true. Very true.
I think that's worth noting, because even when teams are trying to figure it out, the fact that they've been able to win 5 of 7 is, I know the second New Orleans games or the third New Orleans game of that
3 and 4
bunch. But I know that one is the one that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, but I that's basketball. That's how this league is sometimes. A lot of these teams, especially right before the All-Star break, don't play well. So I like the fact that they're kind of getting the offense going. They're figuring some of those things out. I still think the turnovers are a problem, but I actually am not as up in arms about it, because I mean, what have we talked about so often is that the ball stagnates and has these moments. Well, some of these turnovers is, again, there's a good group of them that are just absolutely atrocious and unacceptable. It's showing me that they're trying to get the ball moving more than maybe, I mean, it just shows an ability there to, or at least in the back of their minds, that they're cognizant of it and trying to go out there and find some fluidity with the ball movement. So I think that's a positive sign. I mean, the defense is still atrocious, make no mistake, even against bad teams. And then that's, to me, going to be the biggest, and we talked about it last week. I think to me, I just don't have faith that this team can get where they probably would like to get. But not only that, like, I think talent around them, if they had some defensive pieces, a sense of urgency, or even a sense of give a damn, they could use that talent and maybe creep up a little further up in the standings. But I just don't think that team is able to defend the way that they should. I hope I'm wrong by that. I hope they can go out there and find some defensive tenacity, or even team defense. And certainly Doug Christie understands team defense probably more than most coaches. So but it starts with their give a damn and their sense of urgency. And that's been probably the most alarming thing over the stretches where they're really bad, is the fact that they just don't look like they are that team that is going to bring it night in, night out, have a sense of aggression. You mentioned Zach LaVine. I 100% agree. We talked about that. Like, he has to understand that he is the best player on this team, and he needs to play like he's the best player on this team. That is why they traded De'Aaron Fox, to bring in Zach LaVine and be the best player on this team. And he has not had that opportunity yet. So having some of those moments to get up there, have a season high, get that efficiency back, get the 3-pointers going. I will say this. I was going to ask you guys, like, I know Doug talks about, like, Mike Brown had the, we want to hit 40 threes, 40 attempted threes per game. Doug's number is even higher than that, and it's 50. And that, to me, is a real head scratcher, because I don't know if that is one that is
well. So I'll say he got asked about it when he came on today, and essentially he said that when he had the number as 40, he realized that usually they're shooting 35 about, and so he bumped it up to 45, thinking that 40 is really the goal. And so now he's at 50, when realistically the goal is more of 45. He's just, wants it in their mind to aim high, and that they'll, get a little bit lower than that, I guess. But
okay,
it definitely perked my ears up too when he first said it. I had a different question initially, and I'm like, did you say 53s?
Yeah, 50 is wild to me, because I mean, you have so many mid-range players, and also I think 53s kind of takes the ball out of Domas's hands a little bit, and I'd like to find scoring opportunities for him. What Keegan Murray did last night, great, that's fantastic, but there's only so many shots to go around, and this team, like, I'm a believer that they can get a lot of points on the board. They also have to play fast, and they're not necessarily the fastest team, especially without De'Aaron Fox. So if you're going to be a slow it down team, but also a kind of a mid-range team, how are you going to get 50, even 45, 43s? So I agree. I think 43s should be a target, but I don't know that you're talented enough to be able to maintain that to where it's efficient, as opposed to just chucking. And you may take one of your biggest tools in the toolbox that kind of is where your bread is buttered, so to speak, away from guys a little bit, especially the way LaVine, DeRozan, and Sabonis can play and be able to get buckets in the paint and around the mid-range.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, I think that anytime you make, it's not just one change. The Kings basically have swapped out 4 rotational pieces at this point. Anytime you do that mid-season, not to mention you fire a coach and everything else, I think you're going to have some clunkiness, some weirdness. And I think we all expected some of this. The turnovers, I think a lot of them are part of that. And not only that, but I mean, we'll get to this a little bit later, but Domantas Sabonis hasn't been good for a while. Like, he's in a funk. And he seems to be the guy who's totally lost out of
You
nowhere.
don't think
Which
he's been good?
the last 11 games, he's averaging under 16 points a game. He's shooting like 28% from three. He's shooting like 57% from the field. I don't think he's been very good. And what I watched from him against Utah, I thought was horrible. Like he got absolutely destroyed by Walker Kessler. And to me, the problem I have with that is not that, that Walker Kessler is this horrible player. It's that Sabonis usually takes that dude to the woodshed. And all of a sudden he couldn't. And he just kept turning the ball over. Like the first player of the game, like the Kings had 3 turnovers in the first 3 plays of the game, including a shot clock violation, which goes as a team turnover. But that was bad. Like, and again, he's gone back-to-back games without a double-double. And we're 8 games into this, 9 games into this experiment, like this switch. It's not like they're 2 games in. This is a guy that I think they should be running the ball through the entire game. And I don't understand why they did that against the Hornets and they blew the Hornets out. And then all of a sudden they stopped doing it against Utah. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like there are some major clunky situations going on with this team. But for me, one of the biggest issues is that guy's just not playing well. And he's got to figure out how he fits in the grand scheme of things. And I know that I talked about this the other day on the radio, that there's like, this team has gone through trauma. Like, and people like wonder why I say trauma, but they have, like, but as a basketball team, like firing your coach midseason, is it like a dramatic thing that happens, right? Trading your star player, but even before that, having your star player make it pretty much known that he doesn't want to be there anymore. We saw that seep in for like a week and a half where all of a sudden the team was bad. And then you get to the point they trade him. You get to the point they're bringing in other players. These are all things that like shake the chemistry and the continuity of a team. And I think that they'll come out the other side perfectly fine. I've said this a bunch of times, but I think they're better. I think they have more talent today than they had in January or February. I just do. I think they're a more talented team. Like offensively, they should be better. But even, we talked about this last week. You guys kept saying top 5 offense. And I'm like, until they prove they're a top 5 offense, they're a top 50
right now, right? Aren't they 7th? They're not far off.
They're 8th since Levine has been playing.
They're 8th since Levine has been playing, but they're 8th in the last 9 games. If you back up to 7 games, they were 17th. The fact that they kicked the crap out of the worst basketball team in the league in Charlotte, who gave up 95, it got beat by a total of 95 points over 2 games.
And then they lost by 30 again the next night.
And then the next night, and then they lost again tonight. I mean, that is an atrocious basketball team. And I would love to tell you that, that the Kings are a better offensive team now, but no, they played a shit team. And that's how they got their offensive rating back up. And of course, the schedule will balance out, and you got to play good teams, you got to play bad teams. But like over the last 5-6 games, the Kings have played like some of the worst basketball teams in the NBA. I mean, we're talking about a Pelicans team that was a 13-win team and beat the Kings to go to 14 wins, and you played them 3 times. You played a 14-win Charlotte team and a 14-win Utah team. That's 5 of your last 6 games, and the other team that's in there, the 6th game of that group, is a Dallas Mavericks team that just traded a superstar, like inserted Anthony Davis into their lineup, watched him get hurt in the first game, and then has watched their other center go down right after that. So they're down 3 centers or 4 centers, and you played them. So, I mean, I want to say, hey, exciting, the Kings are moving up in the offensive rating, but you're moving up because you're playing just the dregs of the NBA. Like, what will they look like after tomorrow night? What will they look like, a week from now when the schedule really starts to crank up? So I'm not trying to be super negative. I'm just trying to be realistic. Like, I'm not going to give them a boost in offensive rating when they were 17th like 2 games ago, and then they played 2 teams that are total ass. So, I mean, I guess beating bad teams is something that this team has not done in the past. But at the same time, you don't get a gold star for beating a team that's quit on the season, and another team that benched their top 3 scorers against you and you beat by 17. So again, I think there are things that are positive, but my point was that I think Sabonis is one of the guys who are really struggling, and we still haven't seen this team start to fire. I do think the one good thing about the Charlotte game was Zach LaVine found himself, and that's huge. And I think the good thing about the Utah game is Keegan Murray found himself. And so if we're going to have like check-in moments like this late in the season, that's good.
Well, at least in Zach's case, Zach's been doing it for the greater part of a season, and like that's who he is. And yeah, he had a second biggest scoring night with Sacramento. I mean, it's only his second time he's gone over 30, at least at that time. I think with Keegan, Keegan hasn't hit 20. I think
since before Thanksgiving.
Well, yeah, but how many times this season? Like 4?
4, but he hadn't done it since November 24th.
So, no, but with respect, finding himself, that's one game. You know what I mean? My point is Zach LaVine needs to be that guy all the time for sure, and he hasn't had it that moment. But at least for the large part of the season, even when he was in Chicago, that's the dude he is. Keegan is just up and down. But again, there's only so many shots to go around. I think so much attention is given to scoring. I say this all the time. Didn't Valanciunas have 15 last night?
15 and 7.
How many shots did he take?
Probably 7 shots.
Okay, well, Sabonis, people talk about, you're talking about Sabonis. I think that's a huge overreaction. I don't think Sabonis has been bad necessarily. Yeah, we like to see him get a double-double, go out there and maybe get a couple more shots up for sure. I just think it's a little bit of a overreaction for the way he's played. That's one game last night for sure. I don't know. I think he's been pretty fucking good. He's got a guy that's got a lot of help now. So I think especially in seeing the Charlotte game where he's able to be held, he only played 25, 26 minutes, I think, in that game. Yeah. That's like a blessing in disguise for the amount of wear that's on his tires for this season. So I don't know. I haven't seen him look as if he's struggled some. I think there's a lot of figuring out for sure. I'll give it that. But I do like what I saw in the Charlotte game, and even in moments last night. 2-man game looks like it's kind of back. He needs to kind of. I would like to see it with some more than just Malik Monk or even DeRozan. It would be nice to see that happen with even somebody like Zach LaVine, but that's going to probably take some time. But the only thing I know I can count on with Keegan Murray is the fact that he's going to go out there and he's going to play top tier defense.
Yep.
Whatever he gives on the offensive side right now is a positive. When you're playing with people, I don't look, and it's funny because I've heard people talk about this, on Reddit and in the YouTube chats and stuff, even in talk radio, people who think that you're taking shots away from Keegan Murray and that's somehow stunting him. Why are we blaming other people for what Keegan Murray? Keegan Murray, it's imperative for him to go out there and find those opportunities, seek those opportunities. If he doesn't, he's only hurting himself. Playing with other guys that do that, they have Keegan Murray there to play a role for certain. And he said the other night after the Utah game, I believe. It was just last night. These days are they're blending.
They blend.
But he was talking about how he's still trying to figure out what his role is. It's on him more than anybody else. Don't blame DeMar DeRozan. Don't blame Zach LaVine. These aren't stunting his growth. His growth is fine. He's gone out and become this defender that we probably all three of us never thought he could be. He has elements to his game, but if people want to see the scoring go up, that's on Keegan to be able to do that, to go out and find those opportunities and capitalize on them. Nobody's going to sit there and say, "Hey, Keegan, take my shot. Go ahead." They all want to see him be that Keegan Murray that you saw last night in Utah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a just being aggressive thing and shooting it when you're open, not being passive and playing second, third, fourth fiddle, whatever it may be to these other guys. But Keegan can shoot the crap out of the ball. And I think that even though the numbers haven't been great this year, they've been down ever since his rookie year, really. I still have faith in that shot. And you saw it last night. Doug wants him to get up 10 a game. And that was, I believe, the number that he ended at last night. And you seeing him be more aggressive, quicker to pull the trigger. I thought that it was the same thing in the Charlotte game, even though it wasn't as pretty and the results didn't end up the same. I feel like we're seeing him be a little bit more aggressive. But on the Domas topic, I think that, I don't know, I'm kind of somewhat between both of you guys on that, I guess. I think that there have been some struggles, but I put it more on, again, just adjusting to other players. I think his greatest skill is making his teammates better. And you have to learn how to do that with each individual person, specifically when you are bringing in a new best player on this team and you're replacing what that was previously. Also, the pace is a little bit more up and down, I think, like inconsistent, when previously they were trying to be a really high-paced team. And everybody pointed to, well, that's because of De'Aaron Fox. I mean, Domas plays great into that as well. And I don't think that has quite been the same. So I think that there's sort of natural adjustment stuff. And Jonas plays a part in that as well, just being able to get him a little bit more rest here. But I think that for the most part, it is just these guys all kind of acclimating to one another and trying to figure out, what is my role? Where do I fit? Doug Christie is still trying to figure out rotations clearly. In the Charlotte game, we saw him sub 4 guys in at the exact same time, which was a little bit different.
A line change.
A little bit of a hockey sub. Yeah. So still figuring it out. I mean, Malik Monk was the first sub that he was doing in that De'Aaron Fox rotation for a little while. Last night, I think it ends up being Zach LaVine, if I'm remembering right, the first guy that he takes out. Like, Doug's still trying to figure things out, which messes with players a little bit. I think guys work best when, like, they know that I am going to be playing these specific minutes. Domas also didn't play the entire first quarter last night like he usually does. They brought Jonas in a little bit earlier. I think they might have done that in Charlotte as well, like we were just talking about with that hockey sub. So I think there's just a lot of an adjustment period. And again, I think, like I said last episode, they signed up for that, and that there's going to be growing pains, but that's not an excuse, because again, they chose to do that when it comes down to it. But it is the reality of what I think they're dealing with right now. And you're seeing it with a lot of guys, but specifically, I feel like those three, the Malik, Domas, and Zach, starting to find himself a little bit more in this scheme specifically.
All right, so I'm going to disagree with you guys completely. So over his last 12 games, Domas is averaging 15.7, 13.8 rebounds, and 5.6 assists. His assist numbers are down. His points per game are down like 6 per game over what he was averaging before that stretch. He's shooting 53.7% from the field. He's shooting 25% from 3. His free throw percentage is back down to 69%. He's turning the ball over 3 times a game. I don't think he's adjusting that well at all. And I know it's not easy to adjust on the fly when you switch out your primary ball handler. I don't. I get that. I understand it's going to be difficult. But that doesn't change the fact that, he got absolutely dominated by a third tier NBA center in Walker Kessler. And Kessler. Yeah. I mean, let's not be on. Let's not pretend that guy's like a star NBA center. He's a shot blocker and nothing else, and he plays for one of the worst teams in the NBA. And he absolutely boat raced him for every minute he was on the floor. Now, Valanciunas crushed Filipowski every time he stepped on the floor. I kind of wish I would have got to see Filipowski. I mean, Domantas against Filipowski. Maybe that would have changed things. But I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Like, he has not been great over the last 12 games. That's a long period of time. The second one, Sean, I get what you're saying when you're saying that it's Keegan Murray's responsibility to go out and get his shots and everything else. There aren't shots for him, and he's not a primary ball handler. The only shots he's getting right now is when other people give him an opportunity, and he's down 2 shots per game this season. Look, man, I made this analogy on the radio yesterday. Yeah, if you want things to grow, right? If you're going to go garden, you want things to grow. First of all, you have to have your soil right, which is basically you have to have your franchise right. And this team is not right. This franchise is not right. This franchise is a shit show, straight up. They just fired a coach midseason. They traded their best player. They didn't go get the pieces they needed. Then they did go get the pieces needed. Now they're in cap hell for the next 3 years. They're like a nightmare to deal with, right? That's not how you grow a young player. Secondly, if you want things to grow right, you plant things that complement each other next to each other. You can't put a tomato plant next to another plant that sucks nitrogen, because a tomato plant eats all the nitrogen in the ground. So that's why you see that tomato plant you surround with basil. It keeps the bugs off and it doesn't eat nitrogen. Go do the research, Sean. My point is this. The Kings have done nothing to support the growth of Keegan Murray. He's a player who averaged 15 points a game. They stripped 2 shots per game out of him. They've taken the ball out of his hands completely. I don't know what his usage is last year compared to this year, but I guarantee it's no comparison. Like, we're seeing a player who no longer gets the ball nearly as many times. And has he advanced as a defender? Sure. He's gotten better as a defender. It's not even a question. I think he's gotten better as a defender
and rebounder, but yeah,
and rebounder, but at what cost? Like, this is supposed to be the guy that you were pinning all of your hopes on your improvement of, and then you didn't do anything to support him. Instead, you brought in somebody who, averages like 6 more shots per game than the guy who replaced him. His usage went from 18 last season to 14.8 this season. Like, he's not a guy who gets to create his own shot at all. And he's also not a guy who brings the ball up or gets to just choose to be an offensive weapon from one night to the next. The fact is, he hasn't hit his shots. That's hurting his points per game. But the real thing that's hurting his points per game is he's taking 2 less shots per game. And he's taking a lot less 3-point shots per game. So I think that there is like a happy medium here where part of this is on Keegan. I agree. He has to be better at shooting the ball. He's got to be more consistent. But I also watch your starting power forward get matched up with the toughest guard cover every single night. And that's because your general manager decided to bring 3 guys in who are ass defenders. And you've got to move Keegan Murray out to the perimeter to guard a point guard. Like, what do you expect? I mean, this is a problem that is self-created by the Kings. And Keegan Murray is the one who's going to ultimately pay for it, whether it's his extension or anything else. But let's not act like the Kings have done this kid any favors at all as a basketball player. They took him from the 3rd option on the team last year, averaging 15 points a game, to the 5th option in the starting lineup right now. Oh, Sean is muted. You're still muted.
His mic's just not working.
Oh, you're still muted.
I'll say I definitely agree with that, though. Like, I mean, I think that both can be true, to your point. Like, certainly don't want to say that the Kings have – I think they have a lot of roster construction issues. And I think that's part of both of these things. The Domas aspect, the Keegan aspect of they're not a complementary group. And I think that – I think that having to or feeling like they needed to trade De'Aaron Fox this season made them like have to pivot in a way that was sort of, spur of the moment. And it's just, okay, what can we get best value wise rather than, and not that fit was not considered, because obviously it was, but that wasn't the primary thing. Like, you have to get value in these deals as well. And it's not a cohesive unit. Like, DeMar DeRozan is a piece that like is a weird fit with this team. You like to have him out there as a closer, obviously, because you need one of those on your team, but he doesn't fit into this. Like, we're talking about shooting 53s. It's not DeMar DeRozan, and the ball movement that they're looking for, that's not DeMar DeRozan. Honestly, it's not very Zach LaVine either. And Malik Monk, I mean, he's a good passer, but I think that we've seen he looked a lot better as a secondary playmaker than the primary that he is right now. It is very funny to watch Sean try to figure this out.
Sean, are you back? Nope, you're not back. So. Hey, just duck out, like drop out and then jump back in.
But I do think that the roster construction in general is concerning with this team. And I think it's something that's going to have to be addressed in this offseason. And that might mean, significant changes with what we're talking about of some of these top guys. Like, I think there's a world where DeMar DeRozan ends up being the one that, the large salary that you try to make something happen with, and maybe you go try and attach draft capital to try and rework and find some sort of chemistry with this top group here, because I definitely am with you. They've done him no favors, but the other part of Keegan is I don't know that you want him to be the guy, or that he is the guy that you would trust to be creating for himself, bringing the ball up the floor. I mean, getting reps would help him develop that, but I think that the ceiling concerns that we had about Keegan coming into the draft are starting to show themselves. Like, he doesn't have, as Mike Brown would have said, like that wiggle has not developed, and to your point, again, if they gave him more reps, maybe you would see that develop quicker. But I don't know that we've been given much reason to even see like quite a baseline with that wiggle and self-creation from him.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is he's developed the wiggle on the defensive end. Like his lateral quickness, everything about him, his leaping ability has improved. We just haven't got to see him try to create anything for himself. And I think that the toughest thing for me is that you put a kid that's young and who has an opportunity to be a really good player, you put him in a really weird situation, and you hope that you can get like through this like year or two. And I thought that there would be more of a handoff as we got deeper in the season, or maybe even next year, where DeMar DeRozan takes a little bit of a step back and allows Keegan Murray to become a little bit more of who he should be. I just don't see it happening with DeMar, and the fact that Keegan will be 25 next season. Sean is restarting, so everybody knows. Hopefully we'll get him back in. That gives us a chance here to jump into our talk about Underdog Fantasy. I'm super proud to be partnering with Underdog Sports. It's my favorite place to play fantasy games. You got to check out the Pick'em. You go and it's super easy to play. Just download the app. You choose between 2 and 8 stats from your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower on those stats. You can win up to 20 times your money by going 5 for 5 on the night. And it's something that it's happened a couple of times for me, which is always a lot of fun, and it adds excitement to the night. If you would like to sign up, use a promo code KingsBeat, all one word, KingsBeat, to claim your free pick and a first-time deposit offer of up to $100 and $1,000 in bonus credit. I'm excited. Like, send me your lineups. Let's see what you got out there. I have not been posting lineups. I will start posting lineups here very soon. Outside of that, you must be 18 or over and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. There's all kinds of ways to get help if you have a problem with gambling. Although this is one of those things, if you're out there playing responsibly, I think it just adds to the overall fun of playing fantasy sports online and watching your teams play. So pretty good stuff. Let's see. We have not got Sean back. I would like to hear what Sean's rebuttal would be. Because to be honest with you, like, we have a very differing opinion on this. But he's rebooting his computer, which should be fun.
While we wait for him, I see somebody in the chat. Somebody mentioned earlier that they don't have draft picks, which isn't true. I mean, they got a couple, I think really the notable one is that 2031 Minnesota pick, and Securin Bagley sort of laid out some of their picks there. But what is your thoughts on like the value of the draft capital they do have? Obviously, I think that their own picks specifically down the line could be intriguing to some teams. But again, that 2031 Minnesota one, the 2027 San Antonio pick, like if they were going to try this offseason to go and say it's DeMar and put some picks together, how enticing do you think of a package that they could put together?
Yeah. So, Brenden, I think it's a really good question. First of all, the Kings, they owe Sean is coming back. Let's see what we got. The Kings owe a top 12 protected pick to the Atlanta Hawks. As of right now, the Kings are 13th in the draft lottery. Let me see if I can figure this one out. Here we go. They're there. And hopefully Sean is back. Sean, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Sean is back. I'm going to touch base on the draft picks really quick, the draft pick situation, Sean, and then we can jump right back in to your Domantas Sabonis rebuttal. The way the Kings right now, they're 13th in the draft lottery. And of course, it's after the actual lottery happens. So if the Kings finish 13th in the draft lottery, but somehow move up into the top 4 of the draft, which is like super slim, but if there's a chance that they do, then again, they don't have to give up the pick. And then next season, that pick becomes top 10. Let's stick with the world in which they do actually give up their pick this season, right? So what that means is if they wouldn't have a pick on draft night, but when you get to July 1st, the way the Stepien rule works is it doesn't go backwards. So once you hit July 1st, you get your 2026 pick, right? So next season's draft, you can instantly trade that pick. Not only that, but when the NBA calendar year turns over on July 1st, you also get you always have up to 7 years of your first round picks. So the Kings would on July 1st, if they give up their 2025 pick, they would have a 2026. They have their own, and they have their the Spurs 2027, and that Spurs 2027 is unprotected. They have their own 28, their own 29, their own 30. They have their own 31, but it's a pick swap with the Spurs. They also have the Minnesota first round pick. And then on top of that, they would have their 30-32 pick. So in theory, on July 1st of this year, the Kings would have the equivalent of 8 unencumbered picks, completely unencumbered. Like there's nothing that no hold on them at all. And then on top of that, they have their own 2031. And because they have a 2027, an extra 2027 and an extra 21, you have to add those into the conversation about what the Stepien rule is, where you can't trade back-to-back picks. So theoretically, the Kings could, in fact, trade their own 2026 and their own 2027 pick because they have a 2027 from the Spurs. So you can trade back-to-back picks as long as you have a pick that you at least have one pick in those drafts. They could actually, I believe, there's a possibility they could trade their 2026, 27, and 28 because they would still have a 27, which means that they could technically trade the picks around it. So, like, they will have tons of draft capital. They got a bunch of second-round picks in that trade, but they blew through 3 of them. And if they give up their 2025 first-round pick, they also get back their 2026 and 2027 second-round picks. So all of a sudden, they have a 26, a 27, and a 28. Maybe it's a 29. And then on top of that, they have other picks that they got in the De'Aaron Fox trade. All right, Sean, let's get back to your thoughts on whether it's oh no, Keegan. That's what we were discussing.
Just Keegan. No, and it's quick. I will just mention this. Like, I hear you. To me, when you're kind of rattling a lot of that off, I have a hard time blaming the organization. I have a hard time blaming coaching. To me, it just all falls on Keegan. Like, you have to be the guy. Like, this is the NBA, no one's going to sit there and hold your hand and say, go do this, go do that. You showed the ability to do what you did as a rookie, in your rookie season. He put up fantastic numbers, was efficient, was a whole lot of things. He's developed into this type of player. And I'd say it started in the second year. I mean, we're in year 4 now, or 4, 3, where are we at?
3.
4? 3, excuse me.
Keegan, 3.
It feels like 4, but yeah. I mean, this started in the second year. Like,
this season feels like 6 seasons.
It really does. I mean, it started last year, and they had the same pieces that he had around him in that first year. And so, them adding DeMar DeRozan, them now having somebody like Zach LaVine. I mean, I get it. The roster isn't perfect, but it's on his shoulders. He has to choose to be aggressive or not. He has to be the one that either adapts or doesn't. Now, I will say this, like, he's still ahead. I believe, I know at the beginning of the season, like, he's on that Lauri Markkanen wavelength, the Chris Middleton wavelength, these late bloomer kind of things where, guys that have been able to, if you look at percentages and numbers and scoring and all that kind of stuff, like, they're kind of right there. Now, granted, with somebody like Lauri Markkanen, he was on 3 different teams now. I think he's on so it's, I don't know. I just put more on the shoulders of Keegan than I think maybe you do, but either way, it's still on him to figure out. And, maybe the organization, if what you're saying is true and it's worked out this way, maybe they can save a few bucks when it comes to his extension, and hopefully it doesn't hurt them too bad. But I don't personally think that it does.
Yeah, we're going to have to see what his extension is. And we had this discussion last week. We don't need to jump back into it because I think we need to see what his extension looks like at the end of the season, not what it looks like today. Because we're talking about a player who just, put up 26 in a game, but who hadn't put up 20 in a game since November. And so it's really tough to gauge what they have outside of a really good defender. And, it's difficult to see how a top 4 pick has gone from, a potential max extension player to the potential for him to be either a Cam Johnson type or even a Dorian Finney-Smith type. And I didn't see that from him as a rookie. And I even didn't see that last year, even though shooting percentages went down. He still averaged, 15 points per game.
I hate people remember Tyreek Evans. He peaked at his rookie year. I'm not saying that Keegan Murray is that, but what if that ends up being the case where his best season as a pro ends up being his rookie season? I wouldn't bet on that, but it certainly could be possible.
Yeah. There's a question that keeps
again, all the ceiling concerns that we had about him are, I think this is the part that you start to feel it. And it's, the conversation was Jaden Ivey. I might have mentioned this last episode. You're also seeing Jaden Ivey before he went down with injury this year, starting to propel forward. And I think that it just, this is, I think, somewhat what people were, I guess you'd say, worry about or was part of the equation in a lot of people's minds when it came to Keegan.
Yeah, I do think that there is a concern, right, about like what his ceiling is at this point, and I don't know what that is. Let's see. Jim Thurkill keeps asking, and I can't find your actual question, Jim. No, but I know what it is because you've asked it on the Insiders too.
Oh, gotcha.
It's whether or not we think that Keon Ellis and Markelle Fultz can be like a really cool, like defensive stopper team. Like if the Kings need to get a bunch of stops in a row, and I mean, you can throw in other players in that mix too. I think you could probably do like a Markelle Fultz, Keon Ellis, Jonas Valanciunas, Keegan Murray, and say Jake LaRavia lineup that might have some defensive potential, right?
Just neither team is scoring.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to score because Jonas will rip down every rebound and dunk on people because the Kings will miss a bunch of shots. I mean, yeah. But
what did you think of that? Like, that hockey sub the other night, I mean, we're seeing it a little bit more and more.
Yeah.
I don't like it. You need to keep probably 3 of those starters, really 2 of them, but at least 2 of them on the floor at all times.
Yeah, but in Doug's defense, 3 of the guys who came in were bench players. 1 was a starter.
Right.
Like the hockey.
No,
sub.
that's true.
So you were putting him back in with, yeah. I don't know, Brenden, what are you thinking?
I don't really know how to feel about it, to be honest. Like it definitely stood out to me as something that was different, but I agree with Sean. And like you said, James, one of the guys coming back in was Malik Monk. And I want to say that they kept Zach LaVine in with that group, or it was one of him or DeMar.
It was LaVine, yeah.
And so I don't hate that. I mean, you see those like heavy bench units for a decent amount, and I thought that they did okay. I think that Jake LaRavia has been an interesting like aspect to me. I know that you guys mentioned the idea of maybe he doesn't price himself out of what Sacramento can offer him, and I think that we're pointing towards that at the current rate of what we've seen so far, for sure. Although again, it only takes one team really, but yeah, it was a weird one for me, and honestly, I don't know. I haven't given it much thought. Like we didn't see it last night. Part of me wonders if there was some unique scenario that I overlooked that is what led to that. But more than anything, like it's hard I typically try to keep up with rotational patterns, and it's difficult to figure out like a consistency right now. And I think that is because of all of this turnover, and Doug is very much trying to figure this out as well. Also, this is his first time being a head coach. Like even if there wasn't all this roster turnover, I think it would be something that he would have to figure out what his ideal scenario is. So to me, more than anything, my main takeaway is that Doug's still trying to figure it out and just messing with different things.
Yeah, I think what he's been doing the last 5 games is he's been subbing in Keon Ellis at the 4-minute mark of the first quarter. And he's sort of picked and choose who he's pulling. I know one night it was, I think it was the last home game against Charlotte. They pulled Malik Monk 4 minutes into the game. And Malik, to be honest with you, had 5 points. And the Kings weren't scoring at all. He was one of the few guys that were actually getting the ball to go in the basket early in that game, and was sort of like a preset thing that he was going to do. I think it's, Doug is trying to give Keon Ellis as many minutes as possible. And I think that's because Keon's earned those minutes, and he's become realistically the Kings' most reliable 3-point shooter and their most reliable defensive player outside of Keegan Murray. And again, I think he brings a ton to the game. And you're a better team if you have Keon Ellis playing. I don't know if it has to be 33 minutes every night, but between 25 and 30 certainly is sort of the number I would go for every game. I also think that like we see these lineups, whether it's like someone brings up the Fultz, Keon, LaRavia, Keegan, and Jonas lineup. All I know is that I feel a lot more comfortable right now with Jonas Valanciunas in the lineup than I did at any time with Alex Len. And I think the Kings have an opportunity. Yeah, they have an opportunity
not even close
to just not be bad for 5 minutes. And I don't think that's all on Alex. But again, if you put Alex in with LaRavia and Markelle Fultz and Keon Ellis, I think you're getting clubbed at this point. And I just think that he's brought so much to the court. So I think they're much better. And I'll keep saying this. Why didn't you do that in the offseason? Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it 2 months earlier? And I get you didn't have the draft picks to do it, which again is your own fault. But like it's one of those things that stands out that you walk into a season knowing that the guy that you were bringing back is the same guy that you tried to replace with JaVale McGee the previous year.
It is really funny to go from, oh my God, this team has so many guards, to all of a sudden, wait, they have no point guard.
Yeah.
Not a single one.
They've got 4 shooting guards. 4 shooting guards are fighting for playing time. And even like Markelle Fultz, you can say a 5th shooting guard or a combo
Positionless basketball, right? Positionless basketball.
Well, to Brenden, to your point though,
right?
Like if that's what you're going to do, I'm okay with that. Then run your team like the Denver Nuggets. Run everything through Sabonis. And we saw it again in the first half of the Charlotte game, and then they went away from it. But like that's how you should, if you're going to run a whole team of shooting guards, then you have to adjust accordingly, right? And I think the answer is to run the ball through Domas. But again, I don't think he's playing all that well either. You brought up LaRavia. What do you guys think of the LaRavia minutes so far, Sean?
I mean, they're a little just like him. They're a little all over the place. I mean, he's definitely provides a lot of energy and some haphazard play at times. He kind of reminds me. There are times I think I looked at you at it might have been the Charlotte game or maybe the Warrior game. Warrior game, I think he really was bad, but so was pretty much the whole team outside of DeRozan, I believe. But he kind of looks like a deer on roller skates at times. I mean, he can. Sometimes guys get hurt playing the way he does, but it's fun to watch. I will say that. I mean, I like his energy. I think it's contagious. He definitely checks a box and a need on this team. So hopefully, more times than not, it'll be for good basketball. But he was awesome to watch in the Hornets game. I know he got his first defensive player of the game crown, and that was something that was definitely a lot of fun for him and a good moment for him since coming over outside of that first game that he had since joining the Kings. That first game, those first few minutes that he was on the court made you, I mean, that's the stuff that people in this town will talk about for a long time in terms of some of those Kings legends and stuff, like those legendary moments. I mean, people still bring up the likes of John Brockman and who's the summer league dude that I already forgot that everyone loves.
Oh,
do you remember what I'm talking about?
I don't.
Yeah, I'll get to it. Real nice guy.
The dude, Adonis dude.
No, not this summer, not recent summer league. Like from somebody in the chat will help. But from years ago, where he made a huge impact in summer league because just based on the way he played, this overachiever who played the right way and absolutely went out there and had a ton of energy. So it's a lot of fun, and it's certainly welcomed on this team because they don't have a lot of guys like that.
Yeah, what do you think, Brenden?
Jack Cooley. Thank you, Yiddy. Jack Cooley is who I was thinking about.
Oh, Jack Cooley. I love Jack Cooley.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it's funny, like you mentioned him getting that first defense player of the game crown, and he didn't take a single shot in that game. And I thought that he was productive. And I mean, I don't know, there's also been moments where the shot does not look very pretty, and there's some ugly misses for sure mixed in there as well. But I think it's helpful to have a guy at 6'7", 6'8" that's hustling his ass off out there and blowing up DHOs, willing to, there could be a screen at damn near half court and he's going to be up there fighting through it. And so I think that there's definitely a value to that. I think that he's still very much getting used to coming from a team that runs, at least when he left, I haven't checked since, the least ball screens in the league. And not that the Kings are like still the same DHO team that they used to be necessarily, but obviously Domas and Jonas, having those two guys are just behemoths of dudes that are going to set killer screens. And I think that takes some getting used to, and they're still trying to figure out their offense. And I think that when you're the definition of a role player, specifically on that offensive end, that is tough because you're like, all right, where are my spots going to be? And typically, if you know how the stars are going to function on the team, then it's easier to fit in around those guys. But as we mentioned earlier, we don't even know what the guys at the top are going to do on a night-to-night basis. And I think that makes it difficult for the guys behind them. And Jake has definitely fallen into that. So I would say that somewhat underwhelming for sure so far. But the defensive energy and size, physicality, I think that when you go to Markelle Fultz, Jake LaRavia, Jonas Valanciunas, you have more physicality, size, versatility out there than this team has had in a long time. And so he definitely helps provide that. But I think it's been a little definitely up and down to the point where I'm wondering, all right, maybe the $7 million mark is the right range.
Yeah. Okay. So I think when I watch Jake LaRavia on the court, the thing that pops into my head every single time is that is what a Memphis Grizzly player looks like. They just play hard and they don't give in and they're all over the court. And I think the Kings haven't figured out how to really capitalize on what LaRavia brings. And then what he has brought as a shooter and stuff has been kind of forced. I also think that there have been times where this team has just completely let down each other. So specifically the Golden State game, there was a play where LaRavia got the ball at the top of the key and everybody stood there on the perimeter. They had 5 guys out and LaRavia was like, I don't know what to do. Nobody is moving. So he tries to break to the middle of the key and everyone still stands there. And so then he gets to the middle of the key. He doesn't know what to do. He's looking around. He's spinning around. He's trying to protect the ball. And it just was an, oh my gosh moment. This team has they just don't know how to play together yet at all. I like what he's brought as far as the energy, but Brenden, to your point, there's no way that guy's getting $7 million this offseason. I don't think he'll get $5 million this offseason. I think he'll get more like a 3-year, $9 million, maybe a 3-year, $12 million. That's just my own personal thing. And that's just because he's just not scoring, and guys who score in the NBA get paid. And right now, he scored 3 points in the last 4 games. He's gone scoreless in 3 of the last 4 games. And I don't think it's all his fault.
They don't need him to score. They really don't. I mean, they got plenty of scoring everywhere. I will say this.
That's how you get paid, Sean. That's how you
Brenden,
get paid.
I know. Do you happen to have rotations in front of you? Has he logged any minutes alongside Trey Lyles? I know they basically play the same position, but I can't think of any. I was trying to think of
they had some. I can't remember what game. It's the game that Keon went out, and then Trey ended up getting more minutes, which was what, Charlotte, yeah.
Yeah, Trey didn't play in the first half. Yeah, Trey didn't play in the first half, and then
had we seen it before that? Could you remember seeing it before that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they had lineups with LaRavia and Valanciunas and Lyles. Gotcha. Multiple games. Yeah. That's what they tried to do, but again, I don't think they were worried about scoring punch. And I think it's interesting. What do you guys think about that specifically? Trey Lyles going to the bench over the last couple of games.
I mean, it makes sense. I think that you probably favor, if you're just looking for a guy that's going to fill 12 minutes, I'd rather go in the LaRavia direction than Lyles. Lyles is a more of an offensive option, and you have plenty of offense on this team when it comes down to it. And you need somebody that's going to muck up the game a little bit on the other end, which is exactly what we're talking about that Trey does well. So I think it makes sense. I like Trey and feel for him for, the minutes sort of being deplenished like this, but I think it definitely makes sense. And I was actually going to ask, because I think they kind of go hand in hand. Do you think it's unfair to be like, well, Trey just got, 216? But to counter myself, part of me wonders well, they, needed, sometimes deals are given out for salary matching purposes and in future trades and things like that. But is there anything to comparing the two when it comes to salaries?
I think the biggest difference, like just in the league, is that LaRavia is still he's in his third NBA season right now, and this will be his fourth, like his first true free agency period. But still, like he's a young player who hasn't like carved out a niche for himself. Where I think by the time the Kings went to give Trey his money, he had carved out a niche, and that was he was a player who was earning money based on like a larger body of work. And I think we're still trying to see who LaRavia is. And like, look, Trey had carved out like a body of work on like 6 different teams or 5 different teams. Like, he bounced around the league, but there was still value in what he did. But I would say, hey, like Trey Lyles this summer, there's no way he's getting $8 million a year. Not at 28, 29, 30 years old. He's going to have a tough time doing it.
I would say, at least in Trey's case, his downfall has less to do with how LaRavia plays and more to do with the with the addition of Jonas Valanciunas, because oftentimes he was brought in as the small ball center, and you have an actual legit center. So it's like, did you go to Trey Lyles? You go to Alex Len at times. More times than not, you were going to Trey Lyles. And I am curious to see if there's a world that exists where you can have somebody like LaRavia, Trey, maybe Domas alongside, let's say, Keon and Malik or something like that, especially if you have Domas on the floor, keep that 2-man game with Malik going. I do feel like there's ways to play the two of them together, and I actually think it makes you a hell of a lot more physical. I don't know that I would go in the direction of Valanciunas, Trey, and LaRavia, because I just don't feel you're talented enough offensively, depending upon if you have DeRozan or Levine. But
you would have to, in that lineup, you'd have to have like Monk and Levine in the backcourt.
But I also feel like that having Domas works better for the two of them, especially because I feel if you're having Trey and LaRavia, you can use some speed, and I think JV kind of just a little slower, obviously, and not as quick. So maybe going with a more physical, faster kind of offense, maybe the two of them play alongside each other pretty well. So I feel like that's something that's feasible. But I just, Trey understands the game. He understands that he's got Valanciunas, who is a starter on most NBA teams in the league, and in this one, because he's playing behind Domas, he is not.
Yeah, I think that the thing that just stands out is that Jonas is full-fledged starter. Like, every time he steps on the court, it doesn't matter if the lineup makes sense or not. He's just really good. And there are points where, of course, he's going to struggle defending against, even like Filipowski tried to drag him outside and shoot the 3 ball. You're going to, like, Valanciunas can be played off the court. And having Trey is a luxury, especially if you get deeper in the season and somehow make a postseason. There will come a time where you might need to go small ball 5, and if you have Trey on the lineup, on the roster, and you can still do that, that's a good thing in my book.
Filipowski has to be sore as hell today after dealing with that yesterday. Like, Jonas is nonstop bully ball, physical as hell. Yeah. He is. And it's hilarious because he's the nicest guy ever when we talk to him. He went out of his way to say bye to all of us in the locker room. He seems like the nicest dude in the world. And he gets on the court, and I'm like, who is this guy? Which is great. I think being able to flip that switch is awesome and important for a lot of different guys. But just the, vast difference between the two is really funny to me.
Well, and I love, switching back to LaRavia, like the one, I was kind of thinking about this too when it comes to Trey and Jake. It's like LaRavia can guard multiple positions. Like,
I agree.
And I feel like him playing as a small forward might be more suited for him than a power forward. So I don't know. I like that. But yeah, with JV, it's like that dude is a lot of fun to be around. That's for sure. I mean, he's funny. I like watching dudes like him on the floor. Guys kind of, when they hit him, they like bounce off of him. That's a mountain.
He is a gigantic man.
I also don't think he knows who Zangief is. I made a comment on social media, and I had to go up and I told him, I was like, hey, I was like, I did this with love, and he he gave me the smile and okay, good, all this stuff. I don't think he has a clue who Zangief from Street Fighter is.
I don't think Brenden does either.
Really?
No, come on,
You're
Sean.
muted and you play video games, Brenden.
I don't
You
really
should
know,
know
but when
Street
you said
Fighter.
Street Fighter, I think I have a vague idea of who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know who he is.
That's funny. Yeah, that dude is absolutely like built. Like players bounce off him and all over the place. Let's see. Number one, if you guys are still watching here, thanks for joining us. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you get a chance, give us a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate it. There's like 178 people in here right now, which is like a really solid number for a non-advertised late night pod on what is it tonight, Thursday. Let's get to the business of basketball. Oh, look at that.
Wow.
We got
brought it back.
sound
Wow.
effects back.
Brought it
There
back.
it is.
Pretty fantastic.
Yeah, let's get to this pretty quickly. The Kings just went through like a stretch of games against really bad teams, and like they came out of that stretch at 5-2, and I think that's perfectly good. You know, again, Doug Christie somehow has found a way to, like, after this team was down to the doldrums, he's 17-10 as a head coach. We're down to the final 25 games, but the schedule gets way more difficult. The Kings have the second most difficult strength of schedule, at least last time I looked, which was, I think, yesterday, remaining. Like, do you think they are built to get through this 25 games, or are you guys still looking at the clunkiness that we've seen? Again, beating Utah is one thing, but they didn't look good for a good portion of that game. Again, I think the Charlotte game is one thing where they let the score get down to 9 points and then just throttled that team and blew them out. But I didn't need a blowout against Utah. I needed them to play better than they did. They still had too many turnovers. They still have too many mistakes where they clearly don't look like a team that has chemistry. What are you guys expecting, I guess, in this final 25 games?
I'm expecting everything, anything and everything. Guys, nothing's changed over this past week for me. I have absolutely no feel for what this basketball team is going to be doing the rest of the way. And while I'm optimistic about some things that they've done and what they could do, that doesn't mean they should. Like, I have zero faith in placing a bet on what this team will do. So if you're asking me a win total, where they're going to be, where they're going to finish, I haven't the foggiest idea. I have no clue. And I know I get a lot of shit for not trying to play along, but I'm being dead honest. If anybody out there feels like they're confident about where this team is and should be, given the way the landscape of the Western Conference is, you're smarter than I am, because I have no idea what to expect from this team. There's too many question marks. The only certainty is I feel they can score, and I feel that they can not stop anyone.
Yeah,
so
I agree. I think my biggest certainty is that they cannot defend anyone, because they're going to have nights where, offense isn't consistent on a night-to-night basis. And I think it's just the reality of the NBA. Sometimes shots go in, sometimes they don't. The Kings aren't the reason that, or not the sole reason, that Jordan Clarkson went 1 of 14 last night. He had 2 wide open, crazy air balls. Sometimes shots are not going to go in, point being. And I feel good that they're not going to drop to 11th, I will say. They're 3 games above the Phoenix Suns. I think Phoenix
just lost. They're 3.5 up.
3.5. Phoenix is struggling right now. I'm not worried about, San Antonio fell below Portland. They've been obviously really struggling with no Wemby there. I'm not worried about Portland, obviously. Yeah. So I feel good that the Kings are going to be in the play-in picture, but I don't know what to expect. I feel like it's the same thing that we've talked about for years. I feel like they're good enough offensively to win any night, and they're bad enough defensively to lose any given night. And I don't know I'm kind of with Sean. Like, I don't really know what to do with that. I think the other thing I would say I'm confident in is that this is a talented group. It's just the cohesion and how it all fits that is a question mark right now. And, Doug Christie is part of that question mark. Like, how is he going to continue to try to figure this thing out? And again, like we mentioned, he's going through a learning process. We have 24 games left in this season. DeMar DeRozan is sitting there talking about how like this is the time to lock in where every single game matters. Not that the ones previously didn't, obviously, but that's hard to do while you're still trying to figure all this stuff out. So unfortunately, I kind of side with Sean here, like not unfortunately to side with you, Sean, but I think it's an unfortunate reality of this team more so that they're extremely hard to gauge. And I think that upcoming Dallas game is a really big one for the standings. Obviously, you're half a game behind Dallas, who's sitting there at 9th. Dallas is sputtering a little bit with all of their big man injuries they have going on. Minnesota sputtering a little bit. So there's a world to me where I think we're talking 8 to 10 range. And I feel pretty good about that for the most part for this Kings team, but it's extremely hard to gauge. And once we get to a play-in scenario, I mean, all the uncertainties we just mentioned about this team, I think it even heightened when we're talking about a single elimination postseason game.
I mean, James, they're 2 games. The interesting, I mean, they're closer to 6 than they are 11. So that's absolutely positive. They're 17-10 under Doug Christie. Do you feel like they're still going to be maybe 5 games above 500 when it's all said and done? Do you think that can continue with a winning record? I mean, these are just questions that I have. And these are obviously things that work to make you feel good about where they currently stand. Certainly things I'm looking at as positive and optimistic, but
if you look through their schedule, there's maybe 5 games where they should be favored right now.
I think after last night's game, they have 3 games left on the schedule against like sub 500 teams. Although Phoenix is like dropped into that. So, and they play Phoenix, I think, twice still. They still have a game against Washington. They still have a game against Portland. They do have winnable games. I think if you take all of those games, when they got to a point where they had after that they had 5 winnable games. I think it was before last game, and against bad opponents, right? And then that left them with something like, I think it was 19 games outside of that. And it's like, where are you going to be after? Like, can you go like 10? Well, let me see. Can you go 500 against the rest of the teams? And if you can do that, but even that's not easy, going 500 against the rest of the teams. I'm with you guys. I know it sounds boring. I know Mitch Shively in Shively. There we go, Mitch Shively. 42 and 40. 43 and 39. I think they can get 44 and 38. I think they can get there, but I don't think they can push for 46 wins or 45 wins. Like, this is going to be their strength of schedule is ridiculous. And, there's a stretch coming up where they play something like Boston followed by a back-to-back at home against the Bucks and OKC. Like, that's a 3-game stretch where you're almost assuredly going to lose 2 out of the 3, and most likely all 3. And so those are things that are like difficult to look at and to say, like, how are you going to survive? They also have a East Coast trip, and as like 5-game East Coast trip still on the schedule. And it's winnable games. There are like a handful of winnable games in that, but that doesn't mean you're going to win them all. You're on an East Coast swing. So I would like to, put a lot of faith in what's happening right now. But at the same time, I think we all can see, like, the one thing that in the first half of the season, I think they lived and died by the 3. If they didn't hit the 3, they lost. I don't feel that way anymore. I think they can score in a bunch of different ways. I do think that they can't string together enough stops to get wins against good teams. And you talked about the Dallas game on Monday. I think Saturday's game against Houston is probably going to be a really, really good barometer. And a lot of people are like, oh, they've already beat Houston twice. Yeah, they're not the same team they were when they beat Houston twice. And for that matter, Houston isn't either. Houston has taken a nosedive, like, young teams do at this time of the year. So I think it's going to be a really good question about, like, how do you look against like a higher end talented team? And I don't consider Dallas that. I think you can pass Dallas. But to Sean's point earlier, like 6 through 10 are separated by 2 games total. 6 through 10. Like, that's anybody's ball game. The one team that I think is playing really well and who will jump up in the standings is Golden State. Tonight they ran over Orlando. I think they've won 5 straight. So that's a team that you're looking at and you're like, okay, can you catch them? I'm not sure. But overall, I think that they the Kings are a team that just there's so much uncertainty and so much like chaos, and like I don't know how else to describe them, and so we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. We're not gonna go.
I think also real quick, just I think looking at the schedule too. I mean, crucial matchups. You get the Clippers twice. You still have obviously Dallas. These are teams that are right above you. No more matchups with Minnesota. They're all done.
You have the season series against Minnesota.
Right. Yeah.
You have the season series against Houston. You have the season series against you're down 0-2 to the Clippers. And
then just one more with the Warriors.
You lead the Warriors 2-1 on the season. Like there's a lot of good things. Even the Phoenix, they're up 2-0 on Phoenix, and they play Phoenix twice again. And if Phoenix is cashing it in, that's 2 games that maybe you move into that like winnable, super winnable game category that they might not have been before. So yeah, it should be interesting. They play Phoenix twice. Yeah. Mitch, you got it. Like they play the Bulls, they play the Spurs. The Spurs are falling apart. De'Aaron Fox has not played well at all over the last week. And I wouldn't be shocked to see them shut him down with his pinky issue. They got Phoenix twice, Charlotte, Washington. Am I wrong? Do they also do they have a game against Toronto, or am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, with Toronto? No.
They've already played Toronto twice?
In front of me.
Yeah.
Huh.
They're going to go to Charlotte. They're going to go to Charlotte. They're going to go to Washington. It's Orlando, Indiana, Washington, Charlotte, Cleveland, Detroit. That's the upcoming 6-game road trip that ends March and goes into April.
And Detroit's playing really, really well.
Really well.
I think Detroit's won 9 in a row. It should be interesting. I don't know what to say about like where they're going to finish. I can't get a good gauge on this team either. Okay, let's finish with this before we final thoughts. De'Aaron Fox got booed when a promo for a Spurs game popped up on the screen, and I thought it was interesting because it wasn't a smattering of boos. There was a lot of boos. I was surprised by that. And I also, this is something that Sean brings up. I talked to somebody the other day and they said that like a couple of years ago, the Kings did it, they gauged what their season ticket holders, how many of their season ticket holders were on social media. And it was like 19% of Kings season ticket holders were social media people that were on social media. And that plays into what Sean says all the time, that Twitter, like none of it's real, right?
It's not real.
But
that was real though.
The way that Fox, but Fox's like drama, right? The way it's played out is strictly been on social media. Like there hasn't been like a ton of articles written about like this weird breakup. I mean, there have been, but I mean, he's
had a couple sound bites while he's been in San Antonio that haven't totally gone over well. But
I think
sound bites are usually picked up on social. Yeah, go ahead.
Like I know that you guys probably run into random Kings fans. Like everybody that I've run into, I mean, not everybody, but a large majority are not very happy with De'Aaron Fox. And it's the one that, like, whatever. I've made it known that how I feel about it. But the thing to me is I think that we should acknowledge the 7 years that he gave to this team and powered through all that, and that deserves cheers, and put however you wanted to feel about this year to the side. And like, you can acknowledge those 7 and separate the 2 in my mind. I think it's fine to boo him when he's on the court. Like the tribute video, assumingly that will happen, I hope is met with a lot of cheers. And I would think that will take place with the cheers and all of that. But the whole, like, people feel a type of way that he chose a team. And like everybody does that. If you know that you're going to get traded,
choose
you're
teams
going
all
to
the
say,
time.
if you know that you're going to get traded or that the team is having those conversations, you're going to come out and say, hey, this is where I want to go. That's part of the reason that, again, I think I said this last episode, not that the Mavs were right at all for what they did, but the reason they're quiet is because Luka hears I'm going to get traded, or that's a conversation. Well, here's my list of where I want to go. And then all the other places are screwed and their market is messed up. And it's like, yes, for sure, it messed with the market, but I think it's just the reality of the player empowerment league that we live in now. And also, the Kings didn't have to trade him right now. If Dame was very, very clear, I want to go to Miami, and Portland, which given a very different situation where it's a lot easier for them to wait out a period. The scenario that their team was in, just sort of in the gutter at that point when it came to record and how competitive they were. But he didn't end up going to Miami, and they got a decent package for Dame Lillard. Like it I think there's both sides of it in my mind when it comes to that stuff. And it's a reality of the player empowerment that is in today's NBA. And I think that that's good for players because, a lot of guys around the league were talking about, well, shoot, orgs aren't showing organizations to us. So why should we do that? With the Luka trade being the prime example.
Yeah. Brent, I think you make a ton of sense. I have no idea. I don't think that De'Aaron Fox should be booed. I think the way he left, like he made it very clear to the franchise what he wanted to do. Like, if you're going to fire Mike Brown, I don't want to be here. He made it clear to them, and they decided to fire Mike Brown. And then the franchise moved ahead accordingly. They started to negotiate to move him out of Sacramento as soon as they fired Mike Brown. So again, we can do a bunch of weird finger pointing and stuff like that at the end of the day. But 7.5 years, all-time leader in assists, all-time leader in steals, top 5 in points, top 5 in games played in the Sacramento era. De'Aaron Fox was a face of the franchise for a long time. And, again, I think this could have gone like a couple of different ways. And I think it's unfortunate the way it played out. But at the same time, I was taken aback by the amount of boos in the stadium. And I think we're in for a wild one.
James clutched his pearls.
Oh.
He was, oh dear.
Oh,
I
Nelly.
accidentally caught a video of it, and in the background, because I thought I was just panning up to the score for some social content, and in the background, you can hear me go, "Oh my god!"
Irma Kerr.
Yeah. I mean, you guys said it. I don't tell people how to. I mean, if you want to boo him, boo him. Like, look, I realize he hasn't handled things probably the best. There's probably hindsight is 2020 in a lot of things he said and done. Social media can be an enemy, but I will remind people this, and I know social media didn't exist, but even before DeMarcus Cousins, who didn't have the most graceful exit out of Sacramento either, Mitch Richmond had requested a trade for about a year, kind of quit on the team. It was just an ugly, ugly situation, and he's got his number rightfully so up in the rafters. He got an absolute ovation when he came back. I wasn't in the building for that game, but I do remember seeing it on TV, and I don't recall hearing boos. Even the announcer at the time wasn't the biggest Mitch Richmond fan. So, I feel like this is a very small blip on the radar for a lot of good over the 8 years that De'Aaron Fox had. I say that fully well knowing it's probably felt incomplete because he fell short of a lot of people's expectations in terms of, playoff success, postseason success, even all-star accolades. I get it, but I think Kings fans are classy for a reason. They have that reputation around the league of being a very classy bunch, a passionate bunch. I think they'll applaud the hell out of him when he gets. Here's the thing: I think you're going to hear some boos. I think because people who want to boo have made it their mission to go to this game to boo the ever-loving shit out of him, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people are going to hear boos and try to drown it out with cheers. And I think when they do run the video, however they choose to honor him, I think it'll be a special moment for him, and I think he'll realize that. So, onward, right?
It's also going to be a really fun game. Hopefully, De'Aaron plays.
Hopefully, he'll be there for that game.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he'll play. I don't know anything. I'm just saying. I hope that. I actually hope that they do it. Just peel the Band-Aid off, get it over with. You're going to be seeing a lot of him. He'll get booed. He'll get booed a lot in the future because he's going to be in the Western Conference, and that team is going to be pretty good.
I think there's also a possibility that the right thing is for him to shut it down, get his finger worked on, and not show up, and then wait until next year when the temperature in the room is better. And I would expect the Kings to run a tribute video. He's deserving of a tribute video, but I think it would be better to have a little bit more distance from it. And I definitely would like to see a little bit, distance. Okay, let's get to final thoughts. What do we got?
It's not hard to root for Markelle Fultz. I think that he has been I've enjoyed talking to him a lot. I think that he has really good perspective, obviously been through a lot throughout his basketball career. And it's just, I think, admirable the perspective that he has on a lot of that. And taking to, again, I think I may have mentioned this, but he made it seem like it's somewhat of his decision that he sat out the beginning of this year to really try to fully get his body right. He mentioned, working from the bottom up and kind of reworking everything. The shot looks a little bit different. It's certainly not, Levine pretty or anything like that, but considering the starting point of when he was dealing with those injuries, first getting drafted and everything, I think he has a really good perspective. He's going to continue to make his daily deposits. And I'm curious to see as he continues to get more reps. I mean, he should have a shirt, really. But it's a super cool story, I think, in the NBA. And I think it would be awesome to see him, continue to get more comfortable. Obviously, he hasn't played in 260 some days, I think it is. And so I think as he continues to get his footing here, I'm curious to see if we start to be able to get a little bit more from Markelle Fultz. I think he provides a lot defensively. He hustles there. A lot of guys have mentioned his IQ in the time since he's been around, that he picks up on it really quick. And I think he pretty much said as much. He's like, I played basketball for a long time. They're running things that I'm aware of. And it seems like it's not taken all that long for him to pick up on it. So I think he's a really cool story. And I hope the best for him. And I think it's super easy to root for him.
I thought he'd be able to play a little bit more than he did last night. He only got maybe 5 minutes, if that.
4 minutes, yeah. I think they're trying to just build some continuity with the starters, get some practice in on the court because they don't play for 2 days. Yeah. Sean, what do you got? Final thoughts?
It's kind of fun seeing baseball, man. I've been watching a lot of spring training, and that makes me. I wish I could go down there. I'm like, I haven't been able to go down there, and I won't be able to go down there, and that saddens me. But kind of makes me excited for what's right around the corner because Major League Baseball in Sacramento is happening, and I know we've got a very that's probably tough for James, the A's fan, but I putting that aside, my goodness, that's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited. I'm excited to go see baseball. Yeah. I would, if they're going to leave Oakland, I'd rather have them go to Sacramento than end up in Vegas, and we'll have to see how that all plays out in the end. But I definitely would, I will go watch some games, and I'll go cover some games so we have some better understanding of what we're watching and what we're talking about on the radio. Although I watch almost every A's game there is. And I don't think that will change this year. Maybe it will in 3 years when they're no longer here, but that's if they ever leave.
By the way, my other final thought was, how about Channel 24? Are you guys familiar with this? We have a new music venue that's in Sacramento. They're actually already booking the events for it. You've got bands like Death Cab for Cutie, Denzel Curry,
where is this at?
Others that I'm not. It's going to be on 24th. There's going to be no parking around it, which is kind of strange. But 24th, and not so sure what letter street, but look it up. Channel 24.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And is it going to be a club or a music venue?
Music venue. Much like Ace of Spades, just newer, bigger, a little bit bigger. Like
Harlow's.
Second, it's going to be like our own Fox Theater, basically. So.
Oh, okay.
If you've ever been to the one in Oakland.
Sweet. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Final thoughts from James. To be honest, I don't really have any final thoughts.
Just a bunch of nothing.
No, I mean, look, I don't think we have any idea how this thing's going to play out. I think we're being super honest with you guys, and a lot of people take it as negativity, but a lot of it is just look, there's a lot of changes that have happened here, and to wrap your brain around it, it's not super simple. And we have no idea how this will play out and how it will play out next year or anything else. So what we do know is that it's going to be a really crazy finish over the last 25 games with a bunch of teams vying for not just play-in spots, but actual playoff spots. And, the Kings should set their sights not just on being a play-in team, but they should look at that. If you are a play-in team, be the 7. If you're not, if you can get to the 6, get to the 6, but the 7 is a lot better than being the 8, 9, or 10, because at least you only need one win at home to be a playoff team. And if you get that one win at home as a 7, you don't have to face the Oklahoma City Thunder in the first game in the first round of the playoffs. So I definitely think that there is a way in which this team could actually end on a positive note. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Outside of that, I don't know. I like doing the late night pods. It's different. And thanks for everybody for tuning in for another one of these live shows where we have a ton of people in here. And it's cool that we still connect with you guys.
One other thing.
Yep.
I'm going to have something coming up weekly on Tuesdays that's going to be running from 6 to 7. So it's kind of all I can say right now. But
Where?
Keep tabs. We're at my workplace.
At your
Which I think that we're going to be able to talk more about that, but work in progress.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
very good.
Cool. We're excited for you, Brenden. No matter where you work.
Yeah.
All right.
Not
That's
the
good.
King's Pulse podcast. I know that.
It is
Yeah.
not, but that's why you got to say that right before he's going to.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap this thing up. If you're still watching here and you haven't already, give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel, rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Jump on board with the King's Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a subscriber, all that stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of the King's Beat podcast. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham, and Brenden Nunes from the King's Pulse podcast, I'm James Ham, King Satter for ESPN 1320, the King's Beat. See you next week.